Let's review the ways of interacting with GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio Code. Here I have a user controller file opened, which has a list of methods to work and perform operations with lists of users. The first way to work with GitHub Copilot is through the inline suggestions. Inline suggestions is the code that's been offered by GitHub Copilot as soon as you perform any action in the editor, whether you place cursor or begin typing. And as you can see right now, it already wants to offer me something. And when you are being offered, you have a couple of choices to do. Let's imagine that we want to document these methods and write what are they about. So let me create a comment. I see that it has offered me some description, but I'm not happy about it. One way to deal with it is move to another suggestion, and you can do it by using Option square brackets in Mac or Alt square brackets in Windows. You see, it has two suggestions, so I'm switching between those. If I'm not happy with any of the suggestions, I can just continue typing what I want. I'm using this method is used to render the form for creating a new user. Yes, and I'm happy with this suggestion, so I can hit Tab. It's gonna do its magic and accept this method for me. So also, there is a possibility to hit Control Return on Mac or Control Enter on Windows and open a list of all suggestions. So you see that they are actually wider than in inline suggestions, but you can run through them and see and pick whatever you like, whatever fits most. And if you hit it, it's gonna accept this specific suggestion. That's it about inline suggestions. The next way to interact with Copilot is through command palette. There are various commands in Visual Studio Code for interacting with GitHub Copilot, but I found only one to be really useful because other commands are covered by hotkeys or by other approaches. So they're not very useful to be called from here. So the only useful command is build local workspace index. You can run it whenever you clone a repository because GitHub Copilot by default doesn't index the whole repository. It indexes it as you work on it further and further. So the further you get working with the repository, the better the suggestions will be. But if you run this command, it's going to index the whole repository and give you better suggestions from the beginning. So that's the only command palette that we found to be useful. Another tactic and another hack is to use comments for chatting. If you don't want to open chat and you just want to quickly ask something, you can do it like this. You can type question, what is the purpose of the following methods? And immediately you will see the answer. The following methods are used to render the user form, etc., etc. So this is a viable approach. It's called chat in comments. The next approach is using the actual chat. To open actual chat, you can use Control Command I on Mac or Control Alt I on Windows. So Control Command I on Mac, and we see the chat here. The chat is useful to ask long questions, to check the history, so we can ask anything about our file. By default, whenever you open the chat, the opened editor is going to be as a context for our chat. So you can see here that user controller is current file. You can hit here, and it's not going to be added by default. So you disable the default edition of the context whenever you open the chat, but let's go with it. And let's ask the same question, similar question, what does list users do? And you see that it used one reference, which is the user controller file, and it gives you an explanation. So keep in mind that sometimes when GitHub Copilot prints you some code, if this code matches the public code, it can display sort of an error message saying that GitHub Copilot tried to offer you public code, and because of that, it couldn't be shown to you because of the privacy issues. You can always reformulate your question, like don't print code, just text. Ask it like this, and in this case, you're going to avoid such issues. Also here, you can see the GPT-4o. So this is the model that's been used by GitHub Copilot. You can choose any available model and try and play with those. And also, please, if you're not disturbing anyone, you're free to use the voice chat. So what does save user method do? In order to speed up your development process. If you don't want to open a separate panel, there is such an option as quick chat. So you use Shift Option Command L on Mac OS. Shift Option Command L. Or you can use Ctrl Shift Alt L on Windows. And this is the same chat functionality, but it does not take as much space. So it's going to open in the middle instead of the side panel. So this is useful when you just want a quick question. One of the most useful ways of interacting with GitHub Copilot is using inline chat. You can open inline chat using the Command I on Mac or Control I on Windows. So whenever we go here, for example, I can make this selection. I can use Command I, and I'm asking Copilot to do something. So the purpose of this inline chat is to actually interact with its code and ask Copilot to generate the code. Although it does answer this question here as well. So I'm asking it to do it. So, and there you go. It generates line of code. I'm checking those, and I can hit accept. And then there you go. I've saved myself 5 minutes of typing and describing this method. So this is it about working with ways of interacting with Copilot. Let's learn about participants, variables, and commands in GitHub Copilot for Visual Studio Code. Let's start with participants. A participant is an expert in a specific area. And basically we have 3 default useful experts in GitHub Copilot. Let's see how the experts work. So the first one is workspace. By far one of the most useful participants that you have, and you can ask anything about your workspace. But by workspace, it means that same as workspace in Visual Studio Code. So basically, this is your project, your repository, and you can ask anything about it. This is very useful if you're learning a new project and don't know how it actually works so far, or if you're troubleshooting something and you want to find the source of the problem. Let's give you an example. Where in the code is the user registration form generated and rendered? So it's beginning search. It uses 19 references, which is pretty much the whole project, and it says it's generated and rendered in edit EJS file. We can open it immediately. The form is rendered by the edit user, yes, and in the user controller class. So this is the full answer, and you can continue asking questions. The next one is VS Code. And as you can see, VS Code allows you to ask questions about Visual Studio Code. Example, let's see VS Code. How to set default tab space for 2 spaces. Explain how to actually do it. You can quickly option the editor and set for 4 tab size or any that you'd like. So any question about Visual Studio Code. And the final useful participant is terminal. So you can ask any terminal related questions. So how to install npm packages. Of course, right like this is not very useful, but these commands, these participants become more and more powerful when combined with commands and variables. So let's see how to do that and what commands are there. Let's start with commands. So the commands are entered by entering /. Some commands work in chat, some commands work only in inline chat, but let's see how it works. The first command that we're going to discover is fix. Let's do this. Let's break our code. So you see our code is broken. So I'm going to inline chat here and I'm saying fix. Let's give it a try. So the problem is here that the res parameter edit user method. To fix this, you need to add, and immediately the inline chat offers you this correction accepted. This code is fixed. Let's see how it's going to work in workspace, fix, from the chat itself. So yes, it has successfully found the errors, offering to fix it. And you have three options. You can either apply the fix here. It's going to be applied immediately. You can paste, insert at cursor. So when you hit it, whenever a cursor is, it's going to insert it there. It's useful when Copilot provides not the full code, but a piece of code. Or you can just copy and paste it anywhere you want. So let's click the apply. And now it's applying code block using GitHub Copilot chat. And this code is applied, and our code, as you can see, is fixed. And it even added a comment what went here. So this is the first command. The second useful command is explain. So let's give a selection, edit user, and explain. So it's going to generate a bit of explanation how this works. Of course, you can ask for specific details. You can hit explain. Same as for fix, you can add extra commands, not just use fix and stay with it. So explain res.render. This is the specific method I'm interested in. It's going to do its search. It's going to send some tokens. It's going to receive some tokens. And it's going to explain what this method render actually does and give a bit of examples. So the next one is going to be test, but we're not going to do it right now. Testing is reserved for a separate video, but you see that it's here, tests. And for inline chat only, so not here, but for inline chat, we can use the doc. You can add documentation comment for the selection, or you can add like in specific format, but let's just go with default. And there you go. Your method has been documented, and by far it's been documented pretty well. And next command is generate. Very useful command. So you see that we have edit user, save user, remove user. But let's say we want another remove user. So we're going to ask here generate to speed up the process. Code to delete all users and document it. And just as that, we've got a new method. Variables are commands that give us possibility to add extra context or specific context to our request to GitHub Copilot. Let's begin with the first two variables that have become actually a bit outdated, but it's good to know them and understand them. These are editor and selection. As stated from the name, editor adds the contents of the file opened in the current tab to the context, and selection adds the content of selection that we have picked to as a context for the request. But they have become a bit obsolete because, as you can see right now in the chat, I have user controller TS file, which means that this file, user controller TS, is being included as a context to the next question to Copilot. And more than that, it also states the lines that have been selected. So this specific selection is going to be included as a context. If we don't want to add this file or this selection, we can disable current file contents and ask Copilot anything, and it won't look at this specific file in what it won't be included in the context. If you're working with inline chat has the whole contents of the file as its context by default. For example, if I hit explain, let's see the difference. It's gonna select the whole file and give us the response based on the selection of the whole file. So it has the whole file as a context, and it gives us a very big explanation. But if we have a selection and do the same, it's going to provide us the explanation only for this method. That is the difference. Next variable is code base. As seen from its name, code base added the whole code base to the context of the request, the whole repository. You might ask, why is code base different from the workspace? The answer is that workspace is a participant, and the limitation is that we cannot have two participants at once. For example, if I want to ask terminal about something that is related to the code base, I cannot use workspace. It's not going to work. So I have to use the code base variable. And let's see the difference between having a request with a specific context or without it. So if I'm asking terminal how to install packages, I'm receiving a response which is brew install package. This is not quite what I'm looking for because I have a JavaScript project. So if I do the same request, terminal, but I add code base as a context, how to install packages. So you see, it searched the code base for install packages and it gives me the right command. More than that, I can click here, insert this command to terminal and execute it. This is really, really helpful and fast. Next two variables that we're going to discover are file and file name. These are pretty much the same, but we'll see the difference. File and file name add contents of a specific file to your request. And this is very useful in some cases when you don't want to add the whole code base because you want the answer to be more specific and or take less time. For example, let's see, we have defined a user interface in the file user.ts, and in user controller we have a list of users, but this list does not use this interface. Instead, it redefines the interface right in the code. And we have a perfect opportunity to make this improvement to the code. In order to do that, we simply open inline chat, and now all we have to do is add the contents of the user.ts file to this request. We can do this in two ways. First way is to add the file variable and then press enter. So VS Code is going to offer us some files, or you can type and search for the name of the file that you're interested in. And you can see file user.ts has been added to the context. Other way is to use the file name. We simply, after putting hashtag, instead of writing file, we simply write the file name that we're looking for. So, you see, user.ts is the file we're looking for. And now we can give it the command. Import the interface from user.ts and use it in user controller. And now, as you see, Copilot has made several changes, and we have to go and accept them one by one. So import user from modules users, correct. And const user correct. And we can see the list of users has also been changed. That's it. Next variable is terminal selection. And as you have guessed, it adds the selection from the VS Code terminal as a context to the next request. Let's see that in action. Let's try and run our application. As you see, our application wasn't able to run, and we see some errors in the terminal. Let's remember about the power of combining various participants, commands, and variables. Let's ask our terminal and ask it to explain what's going on. And as a context, we add terminal selection. But since it's related to starting of our application, let's add package JSON, because start command is defined in package JSON, to see what's wrong with it. And as you can see, it has analyzed the problem and it's recommending us to run npm install because we don't have our dependency installed. So we can copy this command to our terminal, run it, and then run our application, and it all starts. The next variable is changes. So the changes variable add all the files that are listed in the VS Code changes, all the files that have been changed as a context. This is very useful in some situation, whether you want to troubleshoot and review the code, or even if we combine the power of several variables, we can change it, and then we can use, we have a pull request template defined here. So generate PR description using template. So it has generated the PR description according to our template. Another practical example of using the changes variable is to ask it to review your code. So for example, we have done a couple of changes. So let's ask Copilot to review our changes for typos and errors. And as you can see, it didn't find anything in user controller. In user routes, it found a typo, list users, when it should be list users, and it offers immediately some changes. So we can apply those. There is a typo in the label. It should be email instead of emailee. Of course, we can accept this change as well. And list.js doesn't have any typos. And as you can see, it can quickly review your code for specific typos or errors.
GitHub Copilot can support me with really routine work like implementing interfaces, classes based on API response. Let's make a request and see a huge response. Yep, it's really huge response, and we spent a lot of time to describe it. Okay, I have already created test.ts file for this interface. Let's open it. Command I. Please, could you... Yeah, let's mark it like JSON. Yep, and let's just copy it. Yep, and we can see how GitHub Copilot explain all interfaces. Yeah, we can see a lot of interfaces like attributes, like payments, like shipping, like subscription, meta, and other one. All of them included to our main API response. Yep, and we can accept and see this result in it's very fast and it's very helpful for us. GitHub Copilot can support me in working with unit tests. Let's see example how we can cover selected function by unit tests. I go to GitHub Copilot chat to ask for the generation of using test by using command /tests. I'm going to an existing infrastructure that I already have. I already got some unit tests created and make sure that the new test that it generates will work with that existing infrastructure. Okay, we can see first some pseudocode, and then we can see new unit test which cover our method remove user. Let's just apply it to our file. Yes, okay, let's fix it with Copilot. Okay, accept, and the same for this part. Okay. Okay, let's save our changes. Let's see. Yeah, all tests passed successfully. We can see that all green check marks showing me that tests are running successfully.
GitHub Copilot can help us to speed up with some quite routine and trivial tasks like extracting data from an image component or some Figma files that are provided. So we can screenshot components that are expected to be implemented, then navigate to Visual Studio Code, open Inline chat, paste this image, then we should select a proper model. Currently only GPT-4 all supports extracting data from image. Then we can ask to do something with this image. Carefully analyze the image provided, extract HTML component and inline CSS styles for it. Be very precise about markup and all the details on image. Okay, let's accept it and review results in browser. So you see, card is created. We have some image that should be provided. Then our texts, read more link, go to button. So Copilot already has done for us some of the job, and now we can just continue styling this and providing some extra data. So let me open it and navigate to Copilot Edits mode. Here we can select agent and the model that we want to use. I'll ask install TypeScript JS tests into project. So it reads and proposed me to install the set of libraries. I continue, and installation is started. We see that just appears in file. We'll set add just config file. Test watch, test coverage, and overall just test. Okay, let's run command. And we tests are executed. Let's Copilot finish the job. It explained what it did. I want to keep these changes and tests are installed. So let me also use same agent mode to write tests specifically for user controller. Let me use microphone. So we see that user controller has a set of methods like edit user, save user with some business logic, remove user. Write unit tests using gests for user controller and move user controller users to a separate JSON file. Okay, we see Copilot refactored code. Let's see the changes. First, it really added some unit tests, prepared mocks. For every method, it provides some unit test implementation, like for save, for the rest of them. Okay, for remove user controller was refactored. You see that some interfaces were added and test data was moved into a separate JSON file. Here it is. And package JSON was also updated. Well, let's keep these changes and let's execute npm test. Okay, guys, you see, and instead of one test, we now have 7 tests and all of them passed. Copilot allows you to customize the way how it generates the final output for you. Let's assume that I want to create a user class and username in types folder. Execute this prompt. Let's see the result. First of all, it creates this type folder and adds user. Okay, it's class. Export class and user role. Okay. But what if our team, and we can keep these results. And let's assume that our team has a different code style conventions. We would like to always use TypeScript for code. We want to name files using kebab case. For example, my-new-file.ts, and all letters are lowercase. But enums must be uppercased, like my_enum. And we want to use export default in TypeScript files and some other project code style conventions, but make sure that this file is short and precise. What we can do? We can open user settings and type instruction file. At the top, you'll see that on user level, you can specify .github/Copilot instructions ND file. Let's check it. And same
instructions file can be specified for different workspaces differently. So it can be on user level, it can be on workspace level. Here I put it on workspace level with these instructions. Okay, let me save it and let me try to generate very the same user class and user num, but in types1 folder to compare results. First of all, you see that during generation, GitHub Copilot immediately found that Copilot instructions are provided. And you see that in this types1, user num folder name is actually lowercase and it follows keep uppercase. User file is provided. So let's go to enum and we see that enum is uppercase and exported as default. And in user class, we also see that it's exported as default.